Thanks for coming and coming and listen to us. I'm Chris Plank from Natwest.
Yeah, I'm Derik from Syntasso.
I'm going to do a little bit of chat today about the who, what, why, when and how of what we're doing in the platform as a product, platform engineering space.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of that solution using Credix, which is the tool that our company uses. But yeah, for you that don't know us, well, we are Syntasso. So we build Credix. Credix is an open source framework for building platforms. It's going to be what I'm going to be demoing later today. That's what we've been working with the Chris's team to build at Natwest.
Oh, good. So no one's really talked about Natwest Bank. Who doesn't know who Natwest are? Yeah, everyone in the room, great. So I'm going to skip a lot of the slides here and a lot of the points, but I did want to really talk about scale. It's one of the things I tend to talk about when we're doing this presentation. You know, whether it's the number of staff we've got worldwide, 62,000, whether it's the number of active digital users we've got, almost 11 million, and 94% of our retail banking customers' needs are met digitally. One of the old stats we used to use is 750 million financial transactions per month, and we process 1 in 4 UK payments. Last year, we added over 1 million new personal current accounts, and we added over 1.5 new savings accounts. So we're growing. I work in the cloud platforms area. I'm an enterprise architect, as it said on the slide. I'm the joint product owner, and I'm also a bit of an evangelist for the platform engineering space. We're responsible for the engineering, the operations of our cloud infrastructure. So we do a lot of enablement. We provide all the tools, the Terraform, processes, things to empower our business units to go off and do really clever things. And there's some of those people in the room today. We've got hundreds of public cloud subscriptions. We've got thousands of applications on our private cloud. We've got hundreds of applications running our Gen 1 container platform, again, in our private cloud. We've got thousands of apps on our PaaS platform in private cloud. We run multi-cloud, so just like most of the people that are here, you'll have everything, right? You'll have AWS, you'll have GCP. Who's got a bit of IBM in the room? There must be someone, right? And there's also Oracle as well for the financial people. So there's a lot of everything there. And we've got hundreds of automated security controls. And at our scale, enterprise transformation is difficult. Right? It's not easy. I think it's harder when you've got tens of departments, hundreds of teams, you've got thousands of staff. We've got 62,000 staff. Let's just say it's a third of that staff is in our technical staff. That's a massive difference compared to some of the organisations that we are listening to in the community. And the big challenge for all of us in this room is about keeping the show on the road. How do you transform, but how do you keep things on the go for our customers at the same time? Because the things we do matter. They're really important. People's payments. If the payment system goes down, right, we all know about it. It's a major thing. So whatever we do, however we transform, we've got to keep that show on the road. And we're now going into what I would probably call our third phase of cloud adoption. If you go back to 2017, or even before that, that was the early adoption of public cloud. And nearly everyone in the room's been through this. I don't think, is there anyone who's not started on a public cloud journey yet? Ask that back in 2017, there'd be a lot of hands up in the air, right? So we're now on that journey. We've done an awful lot of enablement, which is probably phase 2, and we've introduced more and more platforms. Now really what we're starting to talk about today is kind of that phase 3. What are we doing to kind of maybe rebalance some of the things that we've done to help some of the teams that maybe don't have the money, don't have the skills, don't have the staff in the organisation, but want to do public cloud? How do we help them a little bit better? And obviously, as a lot of people talk about, containerisation. Everyone's on the containerisation journey. There's been a lot of people talking about that today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the problem. For us, the main thing has been a provisioning problem. That's really what we are kind of honing in on at the moment. It's all about time to market. We want to take things to market quicker than we've done before. Everything is getting faster all the time. Whether that's security vulnerabilities coming out, we need to fix those. We need to get those out to market to address some security challenges. Whether it's new products, we want to get out to our customers because our competition is getting things out quicker. We've got to keep up. And so it's all about that the best use of the money, the best use of the people, the repeatability of what we're doing, making sure that we actually get a lot of reuse, that we're not repeating the same thing in different parts of the organisation. I want to move away from a lot of the manual activities that we might have done in the past, the human-centric tasks, the human-centric processes. We've all got those. How do we move that to kind of more automated processes? So PlatformCon, I don't know if you know about it, it was on about 2 weeks ago now. I really like this quote from Kelsey Hightower. It's circled there, you'll see it. 2017, he said that he's convinced that the majority of people that manage infrastructure really just want a PaaS, a platform. But the only caveat that they've got is that they want to build that themselves, right? And we see that every day, you know. People want to control the thing that they're using. And in a large organisation like ours, that can be really challenging, you know. So how do you get them to contribute? How do you get them to actually start helping with things that other people have done? One of the problems that we looked at was our pattern-based approach. Over time, we'd built up this library. We had about 135 different patterns. In the early days, they were seen as the fast path, the easy way of learning what other people have done. There were the instruction set, the guides, the things that you could follow to actually get things done faster. But over time, more and more people stuffed more and more requirements into those patterns, which made it longer. It was still the approved path, but it just took longer and longer and longer. And so, you know, different initiatives have been set up inside the organisation. There's some people that are involved in that here today, where we start to look at what can we do in this area? How can we change that? Because if you think about AI and everything that we're hearing about at the moment, and things getting faster and faster, that's an unsustainable growth. We can't keep creating a new pattern for every new thing that comes down the line. So how do we change? How do we modernise? How do we start moving that into code? The complexity was getting harder and harder. There's more things coming out, more security requirements, more regulation requirements like we've heard about today. So how do we get more of that stuff quicker as well? And generally the slowdown, you know, how do we stop things being slow? That's what we hear from our customers, that things were getting slower. So how do we speed that up? So our leaders set us a challenge. There was actually 4 challenges through different parts of different initiatives. Can we use platform as a product, use that thinking and approach to deliver an opinionated product to our internal customers in a self-service way? So you'll heard of internal developer platforms and portals, but not just that. That's one avenue, that's one channel. We've also got CLIs, we've also got APIs. It's how can we get these products out so that people can consume them in those different ways? How can our existing platform teams and our business teams start contributing? Now, I know someone earlier on today said he didn't like the word democratised, so I'm going to double down on that, right? Because that was one of our challenges. How do we actually get these people to take that inner source model and start contributing to that? That's what we're really interested in, especially for our platform teams. You know, our software engineering teams do some fantastic work. How do we take a lot of things that they do and apply that to some of our platform teams who aren't writing applications, but they're delivering the underpinning platforms to people? We've got this general, we're on year 2 of a 3-year journey, really thinking about how we do things faster, more efficient, more simplified. So 10 times faster, 4 times more efficient, simplification. And how do we do end-to-end delivery within 1 hour? When we walked through the process, we actually walked in our customers' shoes. We took some feedback from our customers. And we saw how long the process takes. So how can we get that down to them? Instead of the weeks or the months that it took in the past, how can we just do all that within 1 hour? And the first thing we did was really starting to imagine those patterns. We started by classifying them. We looked at the way they were being used at the moment, and we kind of thought, we've got these teams that we empower, we give them Terraform, we give them tools, we give them processes to follow, and we make them really successful to go off and do things themselves. So, all of the 94% of the customer needs that are met digitally, there's teams that's all they do. We don't get involved in that other than giving them those tools. So we've got self-managed business units with engineering capability. They go off, they do that themselves, hugely successful, brilliant stories there, you've heard some of those today. If we said that, if we used the kind of 80-20 rule, let's just say they were 20% of the organisation. They've got the money, they've got the staff, they've got the skills, they can go off and do that. But then what about the rest? we might have, say, 80%, right, if we're using the 2080 rule, that are still following a kind of self-orchestrated model, where they'll make requests, different teams will provision different things for them, and then they build on top of those platforms. And there's a mix, there's different ways that people interact. So this is highly generic, but really those are business units that are initiating and orchestrating requests for managed services themselves. And if we start thinking about those patterns, and there's an awful lot of customization of those patterns to fit into these two, where we maybe duplicate one of the patterns, make some changes for a specific application or security need or whatever. And customization starts to become the enemy, because you have to do that more and more. And we don't want snowflakes, right? Everyone knows that you don't want snowflakes anymore. So we start looking at this new self-service approach, where business units, maybe developers, maybe other consumers, want to select some pre-approved, pre-arranged, pre-engineered, fully automated golden paths. These things that they might want to pull from a portal, from CLI, API. How do we do that? So we start looking at platform engineering transformation. And the spinning Abby, I don't know if she's in the room, but we're just carrying that over from previous presentations. The spinning Abby's there because we went out, we went wide and we went deep, and we started to listen to what other people were doing in the industry. We started watching PlatformCon videos. The link's there for last 2 weeks ago, PlatformCon. If you've never heard of it or seen it, I encourage you to go and look at it. There's a lot of really interesting stuff there. And we learnt a lot over the last year when we went off on that journey. Gartner's there as well. Gartner talking about the same thing. But really, it's a change in thinking and approach. Everything's baked in. It's all about automation. It's no longer about customers doing orchestration themselves. It's that end-to-end provisioning approach where everything's baked into the automation to provision things in minutes, not hours, days, weeks, or even months. And the big thing that we liked about this was the inner sourcing and the democratization approach, so I have doubled down there, where we can start getting our platform teams to start contributing to other teams' problems, because we can't solve them all in our division ourselves anymore. So how do we get our other teams to start helping around the business? How do we expose that via Git and GitLab, and then let other people contribute? So we went off and we've been working on a journey now. So this isn't a finished story, this isn't a polished story, this is an as-is, what we're doing right now. Some of our colleagues are working on the Backstage developer portal. They work on giving us GitLab and centralized tools that our developer community can use. And we're looking at how we can hook into that. How can we take what we're doing with tools like Kratix from Syntasso that you'll see in a moment, things like Flux, things that are on the CNCF landscape. You heard James talk earlier on, you've heard other people talk, Declan was talking earlier on, about our kind of open source approach now. We've changed. We now are quite happy to consume things that are open source. And we'll use them as far as we can, and then we'll think about, can we contribute to that community, or do we buy a commercial version of that? Because it gives us some more features, more functionality. But we want to start by using open source as quick as possible, because there's an awful lot of sharing going on now, especially in initiatives like this, where we can learn from others, adapt really quickly, and use those things. So, with that, I think it's over to Derik now to do a little bit of a demo. On time.
On time. Thanks, Chris. Biggest concern about Chris is keeping him on time, so well done. Great. So, with time to spare, that was great. So let's just do a quick review before I jump into the demo of Kratix of what I'm going to show for you today. So, Chris's team, what they had in mind is like, we want self-service, we want a democratic platform, and we want to build golden paths. Within Kratix, this translates quite nicely into a promise, which is a concept that I'm going to show a little bit deeper down in the next slides. An open framework. Kratix is an open framework. It's easy to contribute, and I'll show you how to do that. And you can also build what we call compound promises, which is a combination of different promises to build those golden paths, to build those well-trodden paths for your application teams. So before I jump into some terminal and code, I'm just give you a quick overview of what a promise is. Promise is basically the center concept in Kratix, right? It's the definition of something as a service. So in a nutshell, a promise is made of these boxes. So you have an API. An API is that contract. Is what can your user actually configure? So if you think about AWS, when you go create a RDS, you have fields, like several fields that you can fill up the form, click apply, that will create your RDS. So this is the API. It's basically an API. In response to that API, you also need to define a series of steps, a series of workflows. And those workflows can do anything that your heart desires. So they can run notifications, billing, governance, scanning, compliance, policies, but as important, they also provision the service that you need, right? So if you're deploying a database, at some point in there, you need to actually deploy and create your database. And there's also a series of dependencies that you can add. Dependencies are anything that needs to pre-exist so you can actually provide that particular service as a service. Whatever your promise produces, we will store it in a repository. It can be a S3 bucket or a GitHub repo, or any S3 compatible bucket, and that can be picked up by any other destination, any worker cluster that you have, which could be Kubernetes clusters, virtual machines, or anything, like really anything that can listen to that bucket and apply those definitions. So with that basic concept in mind, so let's maybe jump into the demo. I hope it works. It's always a little bit of a surprise with conference Wi-Fi and et cetera. So everything here is running live. So what I have is a few clusters, as you can see here. The cluster on the top is my platform cluster. That's where CRUDX is deployed. And I also have a couple of other clusters. So we have a dev cluster and a prod cluster. And those are the clusters that are going to receive my workloads. So they're just 3 Kubernetes clusters, one of them running CRUDX, basically. So if I am a developer running on platform, and by the way, this is an example based on what Natwest is building. It's not exactly what they built, but it's very close to it. If I'm a developer, I love my terminal. I can move over here. This is Kubernetes, so I can do kubectl get promises, and I can find out all of the promises, all of the services that I have available in my platform. So you can see that I have a bucket, a deployment, a Jenkins, and a Postgres. So that's awesome. This particular developer is fine with building YAML. Some people like it. I can come over here and craft this special YAML that will actually give me a deployment as a service. So as you can see, it's a Kubernetes definition. It's a Kubernetes object. You can see that I have a spec. And the spec I have in my API. And this API is defined by the team. So Chris's team that is responsible for building this deployment promise actually defined this API. Basically it's saying, you can give me some environment variables, give me an image, give me a service port. We'll deal with the rest. That is great. But some people also like UIs. I don't know why. But one of those are Backstage, right? Backstage is a very interesting tool to build to build portals. So this is an interface. It's basically the same view, but via Backstage. I think a lot of people maybe who is using Backstage. Just like maybe a handful, which is great. So it's basically the same view. When a team applies a promise to the Kubernetes cluster, CRUDX will automatically pick it up and fill Backstage with some information. So you can see that I have my 4 promises that are available, which is great. So the same developer could come over here, and I don't know why this is so small. Here we go. No, all right, it's just the screen is a little bit bigger. So they have access to this create button, and then they can see all the available promises in the platform. Again, CRUDX is automatically populating this as the teams are installing new promises. So I can come over here and say, all right, give me a website. Let's call it the default. Same fields as you saw in the previous YAML. They can come over here, configure how many replicas, ports, whatever, and review and create. And what CRUDX will do on the back of that, so CRUDX will receive this request and will actually run that series of workflows, that series of events defined by the team at Natwest. So in a second or two, conference Wi-Fi, oh, sorry, I wasn't watching it, so it would never happen. But in a second or two, you actually see the pipeline coming up. This is pipeline over here. And it already completed 22 seconds ago. And that's the deployment for my website. So if I come over here to my Backstage application again, click home, and just filter some things down, I can see I have a new deployment. I can click on it. I can access the URL, and I have my website running. So I, as an application developer, I have no idea what's happening behind the scenes to having my app running just by providing an image. What my pipeline did was, what the pipeline defined by the team did was actually create a deployment, create an ingress rules, create a service, deploy that to a Kubernetes cluster, decide should it go to the dev cluster, should it go to the prod cluster, all of that behind the scenes. It also sent me a notification on Slack, and you can see the notification coming in for a new website that is available. Is available now. So this is to show that you can bring to your workflows anything that you need. Maybe if this was a special sort of application, it needs to be manually approved until you build trust on the system. So you could come over here, for example, interact with Slack, click a button, and accept that. So that is great. Cool. So that hits the first objective, which is to have that self-service aspect of it. One interesting thing that I want to show you all is more of the multiple teams contributing to the platform. One thing that I have in here is 4 different promises. For example purposes, I set it to like different teams, but actually what is actually happening in Natwest is that I have different teams building promises. Promises is our open framework. Cradix is an open framework. So each one of those promises can be built with whatever technology that you want. In fact, this promise that I just built, the deployment promise, is purely based on Kubernetes resources. So I got my website running here on my worker cluster, my dev cluster. But I have other promises like this bucket promise over here that is actually pushing to a Git repo and running some Terraform. So you can see here, last time I actually created a bucket. There is a bucket CDN over here. That this was triggered as in the back of my request. So my workflow, my pipeline is actually pushing to this repo, and this repo is running some Terraform for me. So this allows teams that have used different technologies to still contribute to the platform. They define their API, they define a series of steps. They can do that in Bash, in Ruby, in Terraform, in Python, in Erlang, you got it. And provide that as a service in the platform in the way that they most desire, that they're most comfortable working. Which is awesome. So this is kind of how the platform is being democratized at Natwest. And then the third step, or the third objective, is how can I make this, how can I create golden paths, right? So you can see that I have, at this moment, 4 different promises here in my Backstage, in my platform. If I am a developer and now I want a deployment, maybe that deployment needs a database, maybe that database needs a bucket, I need to manually come over here and then create some stuff, right? I have to come over here, create my deployment, go over there, create my database, go over here, create my bucket, maybe try to manually wire those things together. And if we go a little bit deeper here, let me just do here something. There's also like the complication of the form. I think what Chris mentioned, you have that 80-20 rule. It's like 20% of people are potentially experts and they know exactly what they need and how they need it. So they can have a more compelling, more complex API and interface, right? So for example, some people may know what this means in bucket encryption, right? They may know that they actually need DSSC instead of SSC, right? I don't know. Some people may know exactly the region that they want. Some devs probably don't care about it. They probably don't know. So how do you provide that same interface, or how do you allow people that want that lower level definition and like more control, but also make it easier for the majority of the organization to get what they need? And the way that Cradix allows you to do that is by this definition of golden paths, which is a compound promise. So let me quickly apply that here. So I will install a new promise in my platform. And what this promise is actually a combination of some of those promises that I have in my platform. So a compound promise is, as I said, a combination of promises. So it's a promise that will actually send requests to other promises. So that allows you to build more compelling experiences, right? Maybe you don't want to provide buckets. You want to provide databases with buckets as a backup. But maybe you don't actually want to provide database. You want to provide an app running engine that can come with a database. So you can build and have more of like a developer experience, a full developer experience. I apply that. So at some point I should see Cradix populating my Backstage, which should now give me a new template, which is awesome. So I can come over here and create my new app. So let me do that. And you can see that this API is different. Again, this API is defined by the team. You can see that it's still asking for an image. Now it's asking, is this a dev or a prod app? And that's going to be used to determine in which cluster that should go, right? Because maybe you want to run prod workloads in a particular place and dev workloads in a different place. Maybe dev is just internal, prod has more rules, more firewall rules, all of this kind of stuff. And I also have just a button. I want a bucket, right? Just a button is the same. It's going to provide me with the same bucket using that promise, but all of the fields will be pre-configured. So if we go ahead and create, same will happen, same as last time. The pipelines will be triggered in a minute or two. Here we go. So this is the app as a service pipeline being triggered. As a response to that, Cradix, this promise will actually send 2 new requests, one for the deployment promise and one for the bucket promise, and say, give me a bucket, give me a deployment, configure that in these ways. And you can see those running here. Similar to last time, the series of steps will run. I can get a new notification here in my Slack channel, because that's using the deployment promise. If I go to my Terraform repo here, I should have a new request coming in to run in my Terraform. So I'm using those lower level components to build a more compelling developed experience. So now my developer, if I look down here, will have their app, their bucket, pre-configured, the golden path, ready to go. They don't need to care about those lower level details. Yeah, and then finally, one thing that is very good for platform engineering teams is that in organizations like Natwest, or probably in your organization, there is a series of compliance security rules that you need to follow. So how do you quickly go about discovering those things, right? So if right now I do get all of my deployments, I can see that I have a few non-compliant deployments because the number of replicas is less than 1. So I'm running a rule, I'm running a compliance scanning tool in all of my promises, and it's finding those issues here. So the networking team in a Natwest that is providing that service, they could easily come over and apply an updated version of this promise that now defines, well, if you're only running 1 replica, bump that to 2, because that's kind of the new world. I want to upgrade all of them. And you see Cradix running the pipelines again, and in a second or two, you should see all of the things happening there. And in a second or two, you should see, I mean, it's running out of space here, but you should see the number of deployments being bumped to 2 as well, the number of replicas of my website and some of the other stuff. Yeah, here you go, 2 to-dos, 2 mobile apps, 2 backends. If I get my deployments again, I should see, like, it's upgrading, so some of them are still not yet there, but you can see that it's actually going through and finding all of those non-compliance instances and upgrading it, which makes the life of the platform engineer much easier, hopefully. All right, so that was all of the demo. And yeah, so we showed self-serves, democratization, golden paths. Yeah, I'm going to hand back to Chris.
So you think about those promises. If we democratize this, if we get our different platform teams all contributing, we can go back to that library, we can take those, break them into components, get those different teams to start contributing, but then we can have other people starting to look at that code, other business units, maybe ones that have got more engineering capability, maybe something that they've done that's innovative, that they want to add, a new feature. They can go in and they can start contributing to that, just following the open source model. And eventually, one of the aims that we've got, if we get enough people using this in the community, can we start contributing some of those things back to the community as well, through FINOS, so that other people can consume things? Could we take things in? Could we start taking things from the marketplace? It opens up a whole new dimension for our platform teams on how they do things from how they work today. So we're on that journey. We've started with some of the platform teams, and every single PI, we keep adding more and more resources in, more and more boot camps, more and more people starting to get involved. So some takeaways that I want to give you, because we're running out of time, and I can talk forever. Engage with your customers. That was one of the first things that we did. We talk at lots of different levels, lots of different communities are all talking, but engage with your customers and find out what they want, and then distill that into something that you can actually do. Now, I really like Kelsey Hightower and some of the things he said 2 weeks ago. Just finish one thing. That's kind of a mantra for us, right? Just finish one thing that's on their list. Start building up that trust. Start showing them that you can actually do things. Embrace different thinking and different ways of doing things. You know, there's a lot of people talk about that. A lot of people are talking about this in the community, and we're embracing some of the techniques and the things that they're saying. And we're finding it works, and we're finding it's positive. You know, I think someone said earlier on today, it's kind of a net positive. That's what we're finding. But don't try and boil the ocean. We've probably picked some products that are really, really complicated as one of the first ones that we were working on. Really, we should have started with some of the simpler ones. But we did that for a reason, and we're getting a lot of benefits out of it. So just be careful what you choose. But choose something, finish it, don't try and boil the ocean. I think that's it. We've got time for questions if anyone wants any questions. Or...
I have one question with maybe a few sub-questions. How do you avoid over-componentization in the sense that you end up with so many templates as components for specifically built for each application, each kind of use case, so that you basically build the application oriented to the platform and then that defeats the purpose of generalizing the platform. The second sub-question...
Well, hold one at a time because I'll get confused now.
Okay.
So the first thing that we're really trying to do is get some of our platform teams to transform from how they've done things in the past. And it's, you know, if you go back, they've got to still support keeping the show on the road, so we've got to carve out some time for them to learn these new capabilities and techniques. We've got to get them starting to take some of the existing code and artifacts and things that they've got, get that into the model. That's the component level. That's the individual promise. But, you know, the opinion is the glue. I think that's what kind of Derik showed you with the compound promises. So we want to create these higher order products, and we really want to start thinking about the hosting products that we want to give to our customers. And so we're not releasing the components to our customers, we're releasing products to our customers. So we don't ever expect to see customers consuming components out of a Backstage catalogue that, you know, we're working with our colleagues on. What we want them to do is choose products. And so a lot of the component complexity, we'll keep that within the platform teams. We'll work together, we'll orchestrate that between our different teams, but then we work together on how we expose products that people can consume as APIs. So X is a service really, but we're not taking it down to the component level. Not unless there's value in that. You know, if our customers tell us, hey, there's value, I want the internal S3 so I can provision that myself, and there's other things that we want to start doing, of course we could make that available to them. And, you know, one of the aims that we've got is we really want them to start thinking about how they can create those higher order compound promises as well. So it's early days, we'll create a few, we'll give them the examples, we'll publish that to Git, and so it's kind of observable for them, they can see the code, and then they can start thinking about how they could use it, maybe how they could contribute to it. You know, really want to get our security colleagues coming in and actually contributing to that as well. Maybe some of our compliance guys starting to look at the code rather than looking at some of the documentation. Different ways of thinking. So that was question one. What was your second question?
I mean, the second one is linked to the first one in the sense that, does that mean that you enable the product teams to build the products so that they own the templates for their products onto the platform, and you have kind of a guideline to watch the template contain? Yeah.
Exactly. The guidance, CI/CD pipelines on how we publish that. I mean, one of the really unique things that we found about Kratix when we create those compound promises, you know, the publishing that Derik showed to Backstage, it's got a little builder tool there that will actually create that Backstage interface. So we don't need to have anyone do that. So we can have people contributing individual components, we orchestrate the actual product, and when we publish the product, we make sure that it follows all the governance that we need there, right? All the guides and things, all the style guides and everything we want, even code coverage and the other things that, you know, our colleagues will put in the GitLab CI/CD pipelines. But when we publish it, it will appear in Backstage. And so it'll have all the consistency that we want, because we want that to be the consistent API for our hosting solutions. You know, one way of doing that, not different ways in different teams.
How do you manage the networking and firewalls between the applications? For example, if an app developer says that they have a dependency on some database or some other application which might live in a different cloud, does your process automatically set up the networking?
Yeah, so the database one is a really good one. If we think about like a managed Kubernetes offering in public cloud, then the database is just an option. They don't need to know about the networking. Literally in that API or in the Backstage interface or the CLI, you know, they'll just specify whether they want the database. The opinion is baked into the promise or the compound promise, so they don't need to know anything about that. They don't need to know about the security policies, the processes or anything. We'll take care of all of that, and it'll be done in a consistent way.
But if they're dependent on another existing application which might need a different cloud provider, can they access
access that.
Yeah, so that's when you maybe start thinking about like a service mesh type approach and how we're going to offer access via the service mesh, and then you start getting in the complexities with teams like the security team and the approval processes around that as well. So there are things when you're defining your product that you really need to start thinking about what is the hosting product and what are the interfaces going to be and what we're going to expose to the customer. So, you know, the Amazon PRFAQ work backwards method to do that first. Really think about how your customers is going to consume it, how they're going to use it, start trying to address it there, and then think about how we're going to code that, and then what that means for the opinion, because the opinion is the glue, and then how we're actually going to do that in the components. So it's thinking differently, right? In the past, our customers would have to raise those requests themselves. They'd have to go and orchestrate all that themselves. How do we do that for them? So there's some of the products that we've reimagined the pattern, and we've taken care of some of that we've changed the networking, and you know we've kind of put something centralized in. We can control that via the promises, and we can open that up when we actually deploy something or when the customer makes a change. And like in the EKS one as well, you know, we can facilitate a lot of the deployment and things to the customers to do that, right? So they can focus on the application side of things, but not really having to know about AWS networking, transit gateway, direct connect, you know, all the different things that they might have had to do in the past.
So, promises, you saw, you know, deployments happening in dev and prod as well. So where's the bill of material? Where's the code? So if I'm idly, you know, I want promises, reflecting things, okay, dev, fine. But for anything dev upwards, I want, you know, my DevOps tools, my pipelines taking care of deployments. I don't want Backstage driven promises deploying in prod. So that breaks the DevOps cycle. So how do you manage that? So how do we get the underlying code? So is that checking into Git, and next time they don't need to go it via Backstage?
Yeah, a lot of the orchestration is done via Git. So we're really part of this model is about us moving away from a DevOps model to a GitOps model and starting to embrace that. And so it's that reflected state type approach. So, you know, Kratix is an orchestrator, Flux is an orchestrator, and then using that in a kind of semaphore model, right, to reflect that state back into production.
Okay. And does this...
Because, I mean, ultimately all prod is a label, right? It should be no different from dev or test or anything else, right?
How the release standard will be happening here?
Sorry?
The change in release standard will be coming into the picture. How that will be happening?
Yeah, so those are old school processes. So how do we actually change that so that's much more of an automated and it's much more of an informed process rather than filling in spreadsheets and, you know, ServiceNow templates and things like that manually? How do we start injecting all of that information? How do we show that these things have actually been tested multiple times repeatedly and they all work? That's all part of the process. And there's a large challenge around the day two side of things, but one of the things Derik showed was the fleet management approach, especially on things like the security controls. You know, that one was a brilliant example. Just being able to go in and actually apply that change to everything. We're trying to work on a kind of an evergreen model as well, so that we're trying to move away from that kind of, you know, monthly cycle of changes going out or daily cycle or whatever it is to actually thinking about how we do fleet management as well.
I think we are on time.
Does it fit, so last one, does it fit, you know, one where platform engineering teams are responsible to provision the infrastructure side of things and developers just write business logic, or can it work for, you know, the one where, you know, developers day-to-day are responsible for
It can work for lots of different scenarios and different teams. So yeah, you can have a centralized model, you can have a federated model, and you can have different models with people contributing to the code as well. Thank you.